I witnessed, recorded, and produced these videotapes of the Washington, D.C. hearing. Their authenticity is above question.
This is produced as part of the ongoing work on the website, thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
This is a hearing about the government licensing the electrocution of people to cause grand mal seizures. Think of the millions of dollars, taxpayers' money, spent to pay psychiatrists and their supporters and for the worldwide travel in putting this conference together, while the victims and opponents had to pay their own way. Dr. Ross had spoken before, but note his aggressiveness here.
Wait a minute. She spoke yesterday.
The gentleman is supposed to, and the gentleman behind him.
I'm Dr. Ross. I'm not a psychiatrist and a surgeon. Most of my experience has been in the treatment of cancer. However, I am a parent of a mentally ill child, and I'm here representing an organization that is an advocate for the mentally ill.
At the end of Dr. Ross's presentation, I will include video clips giving some insight into what's going on here. It includes a video clip from a BBC report last month. This is 2010, when the G20 had a meeting in South Korea. South Korea has come to have the highest suicide rate in the world. The major cause of death in South Korea today, 2010, between the ages of 10 and 40 is suicide. This will help. It will give you some insight into the problems going on here.
Much of the testimony seems to reside in the area of whether or not there is memory loss. The question which I have for any of the speakers is, are there any studies comparing memory loss with ECT and without ECT? In other words, we've heard studies comparing different techniques and sham treatments, but are there actually any studies which bear on this loss of memory? This is the ultimate test, whether or not, because this lady indicated, her loss of memory may be due to the disease and other factors and not necessarily due to the treatment administered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That has been raised by several of the speakers, and I've also received a comment part about that, and we'll try to review that data. The final speaker is the gentleman here in the brown.
In this conference tape, the man, Dr. Ross, a surgeon, has a daughter that he characterizes as mentally ill. Dr. Ross is a representative of NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. This opens a whole sequence of things that it's like a combination lock that is very hard to understand unless you know the numbers. But I use it as an opportunity to open up this some insights for you. In the background, this is December of 2010. About 3 weeks ago, the G20 meeting was in South Korea. There's a BBC commentary on South Korea given during the reporting on the G20 meeting that gives the background of South Korea having the highest suicide rate in the world.
South Korea really has a unique place as being the host of a G20 because it's not that long ago that it was considered a developing country. Today, it is the world's 13th richest economy. There's been an incredibly rapid rise to riches here, but as I've been finding out, that hasn't been without its consequences. It's the morning rush hour and Seoul is on the move. In this mega city of over 12 million people, everyone has somewhere to get to. The G20 marks a coming of age for South Korea, building on its economic credentials as an Asian giant. But many here can still remember a time when prosperity was barely a dream.
This is Seoul, capital of Korea. Today it is a shell, her loveliness destroyed by the shifting tides of war.
At the end of the Korean War, Seoul and its people were struggling to survive. Archive footage shows a ruined city, buildings flattened, major thoroughfares reduced to rubble. And this is the very same Seoul street nearly 60 years later. It's been a remarkable transformation. From being an international battlefield, South Korea literally rose from the ashes, transforming itself from one of the world's poorest countries to one of the richest. And the transforming is still going on. Seoul is a city of continuous construction, spending the money that's flowed in from the high-tech Korean brands that have gone global. It means South Korea has experienced opposite ends of the wealth spectrum, all in the space of a generation.
In the 60s and 50s, we received development aid from other countries. We want to give back to the international community what we have received.
Are there lessons for the developing world in what you have managed to achieve in South Korea in terms of economic development, particularly in the last 20 years?
If I may highlight one element relevant to other countries, then it is that the best investment is in people.
People like this, students at one of Seoul's most prestigious universities. From an early age, they've been expected to achieve. So tell me what it's like when you're trying to get into university. 23-year-old Park Sun-woo told me of his experience.
Because university is very important in Korea, so most of Korean students who preparing university entrance exam can easily fail under pressure.
For him, the pressure meant taking that notoriously difficult entrance exam 3 times until he had the right grades. In a system that places a premium on education, for him, it's been worth it. The pressure on South Koreans doesn't end with their education. This is a wealthy society enjoying everything that modern life has to offer. But it is also a society with the highest suicide rate in the developed world. The evidence is that as this country got richer, the suicide rate went up. Here at Seoul's main cathedral, they're trying to help.
This one tells that life is precious.
The Catholic Church runs workshops for young people trying to combat chilling statistics showing that a suicide takes place in South Korea every 34 minutes. Their helpline takes calls from those who feel they have no one to turn to.
When we were in poor country, we all were very happy because we lived all the time with our family members and we could share all the things with them. But after the industrialization, everything was changed. So everyone goes to their office, their own office, and no one look back, no one care for another.
It's a high-pressure, fast-moving society, though try telling that to those stuck in the Seoul traffic, facing a grueling commute to the end of a long working day. This is a country proud of its achievements, proud to host the G20, but also aware that the pace of change has come at a price for its people.
It was a underdeveloped country before the Korean War, but they didn't have a problem of suicide rate. The family was intact, working together, and the mothers were in the homes. Now it's a very affluent, modern country. They showed Seoul as rubble at the end of the Korean War. Now it's one of the most magnificent cities in the world, and we all know about the fine products created and the fine economy that South Korea has. Well, it put women in the workplace and functionally destroyed the home. Now, South Korea has the highest suicide rate in the world. The major cause of death between 10 and 40 is suicide. And as I say, this is a new phenomena with their economic development, which we helped them with after the end of the Korean War. That's in the background. Other things in the background. This NAMI, I had a friend, Mabel White, who told me that the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill was actually against people with psychiatric labels, that it was parents and psychiatrists who wanted the freedom to lock up their children, shock their children, drug their children, lobotomize their children, and didn't want the children to have any legal rights. That is, for the most part, true, even today. We're talking back in the 1980s, but this is even true today. You can see the NAMI tapes on the internet. But Mabel's background. Mabel was a nurse's aide in the Women's Army Corps in the Second World War. She came home from the military. She was married. She came home to Buffalo to her apartment unexpectedly and walked in and found her husband committing adultery with her sister. She was very angry. She was so angry they called the police. She was so angry with the police they took her to the Buffalo State Hospital. She was so angry with the Buffalo State Hospital they locked her in solitary confinement and started giving her shock treatments. That's how Mabel became aware of the psychiatric abuse. She became a member of the International Convention for Human Rights and Against Psychiatric Abuse. The way I met Mabel was I had taken a leave of absence from carborundum research. I had been working in nuclear ceramics, had developed a way of sintering boron carbide without depletion by embedding it in cylinders of graphite. And enjoyed my work there very much. While I was finishing a degree in mathematics and physics, Nixon was in office, and he had stopped the federal budget for research. There were many physicists out of work. He said a diffusion of excellence. They've had physicists pumping gas, but that's another thing. I had a job, but not in research. When I finished my degree, they would give me a job and engineer in production. They were making ceramic armor for helicopters. But instead I decided to become a teacher. And I had taken the 3 courses to get temporary certification, 3 or 4 courses, and became a teacher. Well, as soon as I became a teacher, my wife divorced me, took my 3 children, my home, and my income. I was working to finish my permanent certification by getting a master's degree in education, and was working in a coffee shop. That's how I met Mabel. Mabel was come in with the people from AA meetings. She had found fellowship in AA. She had initially gone there trying to help her ex-husband, who was an alcoholic, but she found a good fellowship there. That's another story, very important. AA and it's very much like our home church meetings, everybody giving their testimony. But that's another distraction from the main point about NAMI and the background and insight into why they would be the enemy of those who had psychiatric labels. I had, in these times, I had been following the literature and the journal Science of the National Association for the Advancement of Science. And they were the main publishing point for the physiological research going on in split brain research and insights. And my friend John Marvin was following in Scientific American the things with the drug effects on the brain. But we put together an all-day teacher seminar on the curricular implications of the new physically founded models of human behavior. That was before the physiological insights were in the psychology textbooks, and the psychobabble had been replaced by some insight into brain functioning. That the background there is that we have many parts. We're not an entity. It's normal to have many parts. Brain stem, a reptilian brain, the corpus callosum, connecting the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. And if you cut that, you see that the two hemispheres are completely separate functioning. One eye connected to one brain and another eye to another brain, so forth. Very interesting that that's a bit of a distraction. In the limbic brain, the mammalian brain, and the cerebellum, the activity brain. And then the research showing when doing operations for people with epileptic seizures and leaving implanted electrodes, a person having those electrodes stimulated had experiences from their childhood, but not as an adult, with all the feelings and reactions without the insights of adulthood. That life stage was stored and had gotten bypassed as development occurred. The Piagetian levels of development, it would appear that when we go through an operational stage change, the neurological network, synaptic junction network, is kind of fixed in the old life stage, so a new area of the brain develops to accommodate the growth in insight. So we have different levels of development, and our early life stages are there inside us too. One of the reasons why intimacy is such a valuable thing. Those by role reversal, we can go back in those infantile life stages, have some opportunity to live in our body during the intimacy of a personal relationship. But that's another distraction. My professor of education at the university wanted me to publish, and when I showed him all the insights and the work that done for the all-day teacher workshop, I didn't, but I did give lectures at the Unitarian Church and ended up joining the Unitarian Church, became director of adult education, and had a seminar, an 8-week seminar on the needs of children, a different speaker each week. And this is important because it gave me insight. I was teaching a math course, Math for the Bad Boys, I called it. The title was Math for the Building Trades, but most of the boys were without fathers, rebellious, on the street, not listening to their mother. The only way I could get them under control was to require the homework every day, and if they didn't do it, they had to stay after school. And I stayed and I worked with them. I found in developing a relationship I could have some help them to be more successful in terms of their educational outcomes. Dr. Donaferio, who is from the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Clinic. The 8-week seminar went from pregnancy to different life stages as children develop. And he was there for teenagers. he came from the major referral center for troubled children, that the public schools and private schools would refer children for help, the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Clinic. And as the moderator of the seminar, I had the opportunity after the presentation to open up the question and answer period, and I would maybe ask the first question. But while Dr. Donaferio was presenting this information about children that were and adolescents that had permanent psychiatric difficulties, as far as society is concerned, behavior problems, that they didn't function very well in this society, I was perplexed. I thought I was teaching the troubled children, these boys without fathers. And Dr. Donaferio explained, no, they do not end up, they might end up criminal and in jail, but not psychiatric. They have the ability to function and work in groups. They have social skills. It's the children that are deprived of the freedom to interact in group behavior and play with other children that end up without the social skills. Apparently, this is part of the development when nerve growth factor is present in certain areas of the brain. Children need to have the freedom to explore and group activity. And children discipline children in a group, and they learn to function as a group in play, or they have difficulty, and it's a learning experience. But so it's the children that are more isolated, without siblings, and not given the freedom to go out and play on the street or go out and play in the woods. And I had a shocking example of this. A boy I taught, and he was brilliant, but didn't have a lot of social skills, but he was one of the top students because he could memorize and remember anything to pass the test. He went on to Harvard, and his father was a dentist, and he had been kept at home. He had not been allowed to go out and play with other children. And he went to Harvard. The next thing I know, he's back and washing dishes at the restaurant where I would often eat. It turned out he didn't have the social skills to work in a group or work independently. And I experienced the same thing teaching. I had to teach one class of 9th grade general science. Everybody in the science department did. We were teaching a laboratory-oriented course, ISCS, where the children would work in teams and discovery, working mainly with chemicals. But we had a Catholic school, just elementary school up to 8th grade in our school district, and then the children would come into public school in 9th grade. And these children from the Catholic schools didn't have much freedom. They had to learn by memorization and sit in your seat and behave. They were dysfunctional when it came to having the freedom for a laboratory investigation course. It was very hard for them. They didn't do well. They would destroy equipment. They would not produce any insights. They were not able to use the freedom. They hadn't had the freedom in the child development stages. This is important. And many Catholic schools I know understand that, and they have activity-oriented programs. So it was just maybe a local phenomena or a period before they had instituted the activity-oriented experience learning type behavior. But that's another point. At any rate, this Dr. Ross had a child that he labeled as mentally ill and wanted the power, and it's typical, the power to control this person. And that's what had caused the problem in the first place. The child is a victim of society and parents, just like the suicide rate in South Korea now due to modernization and the mothers not being in home. Daycare doesn't make it. Children need a mammalian nursing bond for a couple of years, and they need a mother to go home to when they get beat up outside or fall and hurt their knee. And they need generational communications for the insights of human growth and development that older people have that's lost today. It's replaced by some book learning and university theory, and the problem of universities being corrupted by a worldview that doesn't have the insights. Worldview developed by reacting to a dominating culture like the Jewish or Muslim culture, where you need to, or rigorous Christian culture, or many of the Hindu the same. The children brought up in these dogmas only have the ability to comply or rebel. They're robbed of the developmental stages for individual sovereignty. So they lack the balance. They're rebelling against what corrupted them, but they were deprived of those developmental stages and insights that come from generational communications and love and carrying an actual experience out in the woods, building, caring for animals, caring for gardens, experiencing reality, and being functionally able to do things like build a doghouse even, or hook a couple of wires up and understand what they're doing. That many lack all of these opportunities for experience. But here's the background. NAMI is against the children that are the victims of the parents and the society. And they can find a ready hireling that will lock them up, force drug them, lobotomize them, shock treatment them. The children are the victims. The suicide rate in South Korea is a product of a sick culture. Culture has gone from cultures like culture to, in a laboratory you're growing something, or agriculture you're growing plants. Human culture is supposed to be growing humans, but with affluence, children go to be raised by wet nurses and daycare, and they're deprived of the ability to have mammalian caring. There's a developmental problem here that causes the affluent and powerful class to become narcissistic because they don't raise their children with love. And now that's spread into the working class, with mothers going in after the Second World War here and earlier than that in Russia. And you look at what it's done. And now Korea is a very clear example. It's a deprivation of human growth and development needs in the early life stages. The nursing bond, the mother in the home, and the freedom to go out and play in the woods and play with other children. What a shame to deprive children of this, and then psychiatrically label them and drug them and shock them and lobotomize them and make them feel guilty that they're the problem when they're the victim. That's enough for that background. Now, NAMI, it's not an alliance for the mentally ill, it's alliance for the control of people that they psychiatrically label, of the children who are their victims. of them and their society. And they are probably the victims of society. Thank you. One shock treatment can equal 150 joules of energy. This is equal to dropping a hammer on someone's head from higher than a 5-story building.
At the FDA hearings, the testimony on the reclassification of electroconvulsive devices cited the literature as whether it's signed or false, typically about 150 joules of energy in a treatment. With the new Thymatron electroconvulsive device, if you check out at 400 volts maximum of 0.9 amps and 320 some millisecond pulses.
Could you finish up your question, your remarks?
Yeah, I would like somebody to tell me. I'm a teacher as well as a physicist, and I brought a kilogram with me. Teachers like to demonstrate. Now, this is a kilogram. It's 2.2 pounds. Heavier than a hammer used to hit a hammer. But I wonder if possibly like Dr. Stein could tell me how high I would have to drop this kilogram from in order to have it hit the ground with 150 joules of energy.
I don't know if that question is in the purview of the panel, but that should be your point. I'd like to go on to the next question.
This is only 10 joules of energy. You're talking about dropping it from higher than a 5-story building. That's physics. Supposedly in pre-med backgrounds.
Thank you.
I never got
All right, out with your gum. Out with your gum.
Okay, this won't hurt. It'll be over in just a moment.
What's that?
Conductant.
Oh, that will do you. Right, Mr. Jackson.
Open your mouth.
What's that?
This will keep you from biting your tongue.
Well,
Now just bite down on it. That's right. Just bite down. Now bite down on it.
good. Are you ready?
Ready.